At the very end of the first temple, we see what King Andrias has been hiding. Now, I do not think it is particularly surprising that he is not the kindly ruler he initially presents himself as. Honestly, I believe that even the kids who are watching Amphibia would probably have figured out by now that he has some nefarious secrets. But he turns out to be hiding quite a lot more than I think a lot of us anticipated, so I think we should talk about that. First, let's go through the last scene of the first temple, in which we get a lot of information implied about the king, and then let's investigate and hypothesize about what his dark plans really entail. Here we go. So after our heroes emerge victorious from the temple challenge, we cut to Newtopia, and Yunnan runs in there with some terrible news. Apparently, she says to Andrias, the kingdom is encountering a lot of instability. The toads are organizing. Grime is still on the run, and Sasha is with him. The kingdom is being broken apart by slowly enlarging pockets of revolution. This is quite disconcerting news, but Andrias does not seem particularly bothered by it. He seems like a child who is given some strict instructions by their parents and is like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, and then just proceeds to completely ignore those instructions once their parents stop talking to them. That's what this reminds me of. Well, now, is Andrias happy about this news Yunnan brings? No, but it does not seem to particularly affect his plans. When he receives other news about Marcy, he promptly forgets about Yunnan. That's how pleased he is. That's how enthused he is by Marcy's success. Now, at first this seems innocent, if a little bit suspicious, but then it quickly gets much darker. Wielding a piece of bioluminescent coral in his hands, he descends down a dark stairwell into a hidden chamber in the basement. And from here he schemes, and we're left to contemplate. He is jubilant about Marcy's success with the gem, and it's worth asking ourselves why exactly this is. How does it benefit him? The best theory I've heard about the gems so far is that the power can either belong to the gems or it can belong to our heroes. Now that Marcy has empowered the gem by surviving the trials in the Temple of Knowledge, she loses her own power. This is substantiated by what we see right at the end of the episode. It's quick enough that you could miss it. I missed it the first time I watched this episode, but you can see the color slowly drain from her eyes. Her eyes flash green for a second, and then the level of green just descends until there's nothing left there, which is not a good sign for Marcy. We'll have to investigate this theory about Marcy by looking at her behavior in future episodes. If she stops being this dominant badass and reverts back to being the clumsy girl that we see in the flashbacks, then we would know that our theory is correct and that Marcy has lost a significant amount of her power. Now let us return to King Andrias descending into the basement. I heard one person on Reddit talking about this as why the basement is off limits in Anne and Marcy's sleepover episode, and this theory makes sense to me. It's not because of the ghosts that trouble Anne and Marcy. We see these ghosts, but King Andrias seems utterly unbothered by them, as though they were nothing but ants or flies in his way. When King Andrias finishes descending the staircase, he does something very curious. He sets his crown down on the floor. Now, this is not just some ordinary floor. This looks very ornamental and ritualistic. Is it possible the crown itself has powers? Possibly. Now, it could just be that Andrias is taking off the crown because he wants to demonstrate how he is subordinate to the strange bug creature that he seems to serve. And that's why he doesn't want to be a king, at least in the presence of this creature. But it's also possible that the crown itself has some sort of unknown powers and characteristics that we are not yet aware of, so we should think about that as the season proceeds. Of course, even if the crown does have some power, we don't know it yet, so it's not worth wondering about that. After placing the crown down, Andrias speaks some lines to this strange bug creature, talking about how the prophecy is being undone, and how they are finally getting revenge. These are strange comments, and I'm not entirely sure how to parse them. What exactly is this prophecy? And furthermore, what has been done to Andrias and the Thousand-Eyed Monster to the extent that it would make them want to seek revenge? Perhaps revenge on Anne and Marcy and Sasha? Now, we can make educated guesses, even though we don't know for sure. Early in the first temple, we see this beautiful mural that demonstrates a woman who looks suspiciously like Anne, brandishing a sword against a monster that could be this bug-like creature. But even then, we have to ask ourselves, is it future or is it past? To quote Twin Peaks. We have two different topics here that are related in some way, but seem different, those being the idea of revenge and the idea of the prophecy. These belong to two very distinct temporalities. One is the past, and the other is the future. Prophecy is foretelling what will be. Revenge is taking action in response to that which was done sometime in the past. Andrias believes, seemingly, that he and his master have both been wronged, but is this something that happened in the past, or is this something they foresee will happen in the future? We don't know. It's entirely possible that it could be both. I know that sounds weird, but bear with me here. It's entirely possible that this creature is from the future, but it has traveled back in time to the past, and Andrias has allied with it in order to stop the prophecy that will bring out the destruction of the bug, or at least the bug's ambitions, from becoming reality. Will prevent that prophecy from ever seeing the light of day. Now, I am not entirely sure I want time travel in Amphibia. There's already a lot of fantasy elements going on here, and adding time travel haphazardly is never a good idea. It raises so many questions, and more importantly, it just can kind of mess up the overall tone of the show if you just take this melting pot of speculative fiction tropes and just dump in something as drastic as time travel. That said, it is not entirely impossible that time travel could have occurred, especially if the theory that I've seen some fans come up with, that the bug is from the future, are true. It seems like a mechanical entity, judging by its sounds. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it is mechanical, but I don't think the people who think that are entirely wrong conceptually, especially considering its dark color palette, all those grays and blacks and reds. It's very industrial. So I don't think it is entirely impossible that this creature is not organic, that it's the result of some being from the future building a time portal and going back to now. Now, as the series progresses, I am assuming that we will learn significantly more about King Andrias and about this strange and wonderful bug creature. Additionally, I have to wonder if his plan to zap the gem energy from all 3 of our main cast members will succeed. Think back to the trailer for Season 2B. We see Sasha and Anne fighting, and Anne's sword is glowing blue. Now, if this were The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings, that would mean that there were orcs nearby. But considering that it's not, the best explanation would be that it's colored blue by Anne's Calamity Box powers, which are associated with the color blue, and we've seen her eyes glow blue before. So does this mean that the king's plan to take away her power doesn't succeed? It's likely that they will go to the temple, the second temple, that's associated with Anne, long before Anne and Sasha fight. And yes, I am fairly certain that the second temple is Anne's, just like the first one was Marcy's. The third temple, it looks like it's very clearly Sasha's, and also the second temple, from what we know, is located in the far north, or at least in some sort of snowy region, and snow is typically associated with the color blue, not the color red, or purple, or pink, or whatever. So, why doesn't Anne lose her gem power if she doesn't? Does she become wary because of what happens to Marcy? Does the second gem even become recharged? That's something we have to seriously consider. What is clear at this point is that the Calamity Box has a lot more powers than Anne and Sasha and Marcy know at this point. It can do a lot more than just transport them here and transport them back. If it does have that power to act as this interdimensional gateway, who knows what other powers it might have that we don't know about. We'll have to keep ourselves aware as the series progresses so we can pick up on more clues. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like and comment and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can and you want to see more videos like this. Keep watching Amphibia. It can be a really clever show. I really enjoyed the first Temple episode. And I do think the show is definitely at its best when it takes its time. When it has the space to craft these expansive stories instead of shuttling everything into 11-minute slice of life episodes. But I guess we'll see what the show does as it progresses. I'm sure there are a lot of good ideas in the future. Can't wait to see what Matt Brawley and his team come up with. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. Sure to be coming soon. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.